Hey everybody, Sean from Media Assault here, and it's time for episode number 4 in my countdown to Star Trek Into Darkness. And that, of course, means we'll be looking at Star Trek IV, The Voyage Home. Here's the front of the Blu-ray, and here is the back. This is a film from 1986. It was directed by Leonard Nimoy, and it was by far the most successful of the original 6 original cast films that were made between 1979 and 1991. And this one was directed by Leonard Nimoy, as I said. He also directed Star Trek III, which is one of my least favorite entries into the series. And this is one of probably my second favorite entry into the series, at least as far as I remember. And I confirmed that with the rewatch that I did last night. Pretty much everything that he did wrong or that was wrong with episode 3 of the series is corrected in Star Trek IV. The humor that was off-timed or just misfiring in number 3 is completely spot on in terms of timing in episode 4. This is one of the funniest movies that I've seen as far as science fiction goes. I think that's ever been made. It's hilarious. Now, the concept of it, or the actual plot of it, is, pretty implausible even for a Star Trek outing. But once you kind of wrap your head around it and decide to just accept that this is the premise of the film, you can have a lot of fun with it. Real quick, the plot picks up right where Star Trek III left off. We've got Spock now trying to piece together his identity from his katra being put back into his body, his life essence being put back into his body, and he's kind of trying to get his brains back from being scrambled, I guess, and remember the essence of who he is and who he was to his friends, of course, the crew of the Enterprise. And they are preparing themselves to face the consequences for their actions in episode 3. I keep calling it episode 3 like it's Star Wars, but Star Trek 3. And on the journey back to Earth to face the consequences, to basically stand trial for what they did for stealing the Enterprise and whatnot in Star Trek 3, they take on this task of saving planet Earth from this alien probe that is apparently looking for a response to its constant signaling, and they determine that the only thing that can actually respond in the correct manner to this probe are the now extinct humpback whales. So taking their Klingon battlecruiser that they've obtained in Star Trek III, they travel back in time to 1986 to obtain 2 humpback whales to save the planet. That's the whole premise of the movie, basically. I did see this in the theater when it was originally released. I remember it being warmly received by the audience. I watched it with friends last night. It was again warmly received, but the perspective was a little different. Watching this in 1986, it was, of course, the Star Trek people of the future traveling back in time to what was the present then, and now it's the Star Trek people of the future traveling into my past, and obviously your past and everybody else's past, because it's obviously not 1986 anymore. So it was kind of interesting to revisit the modern day of 1986 and compare it to the current modern day. So it was kind of interesting to have the difference in perspective from what was not necessarily noticeable as being funny or odd or just unique for the time back then versus what it is now. Just as an example, personal computers of 1986 are obviously quite a bit different from the personal computers of today. That's painfully obvious in this movie. There are just so many other things that just struck me as funny. I could talk all day about that, but as far as the film goes, it makes a lot of commentary about the late 20th century that is still relevant in the early 21st century. It is still a good film in terms of the visual effects. They're all pretty good. I didn't see as much of the effects work that was dated like I did in the first one, the second one, and a little bit in the third one. This one actually stands up pretty well, especially the whale effects. They are fantastic. And apparently, when the movie was originally released, the government was a little upset with the filmmakers for getting too close to the whales when, in fact, the whales were actually 4-foot models. I don't think anyone will have that mistake made with CGI in the present day. But these models were so realistic that somebody actually thought they had filmed real whales. And I can see how that could be because the effects work is just fantastic. I made a comment when I was watching the film on Saturday night that this is sort of the Keystone Cops entry into the series. For anyone who complained that any of the first 3 entries into the Star Trek films were too serious or took themselves too seriously, that is completely remedied here. The goal of this film seems to be, while it does talk about, man's inhumanity to nature in the late 20th century, the focal point of the script seems to be the humor and the relations between all of the different cast members and what they bring to the table in a humorous vein. It's not a film to be taken too seriously. I think that's why it made more money than any of the previous or subsequent Star Trek films up until the 2009 reboot of the series. That's the first one that actually passed it in terms of box office receipts. It made over $100 billion at the box office back in 1986, so comparatively I don't know what that would be today adjusting for inflation, but it was a very successful film, especially for a film that only cost about $20-some million to make. Just a really, really successful, well put together, well made film, easy to enjoy, very light. This is totally the antithesis of Star Trek the Motion Picture, which was hardcore science fiction and very almost morbidly serious. This one is just absolutely light, easy to enjoy, and just a whole hell of a lot of fun. So I give it an 8.5 out of 10. Like I said, the visual effects are fantastic. You do have to kind of shut your brain off and kind of accept this rather implausible premise, but it's a lot of fun once you do that. And like I said, this is my second favorite, with Star Trek II being my favorite of the original 6 films so far. At least, I'm basing that on memory. But now there are only 2 films left: Star Trek V, The Final Frontier, and Star Trek VI, The Undiscovered Country. I know I like Star Trek VI, and I really haven't seen Star Trek V from beginning to end ever. It played at my theater back in '88, but I watched bits and pieces of it walking in and out of the theater when it was playing. I don't think I ever sat down and watched it from beginning to end. So that will be a treat next week when I take a look at Star Trek V, The Final Frontier. And that is the first entry in the series that is directed by William Shatner. So thanks again, everybody, for traveling along on this journey. As always, feel free to check out the originator of this series, which is Planet Shannon TV. I will put a link to her channel below. Also check out the others playing along with the countdown, including Gray 1951. And I apologize, I got your name wrong last week. So as always, feel free to rate, comment, and subscribe if you haven't done so already. Thanks again for watching, everybody, and take it easy.